the second day of our research mentoring and data analysis bootcamp. Um, as we embark on another day on exploration and learning, and we delve deep into the fundamentals of educational research and data analysis yesterday, guided by our esteemed speakers who share their expertise and insights. Today, we continue this journey eager to expand our knowledge and refine our skills further. Before we commence with today's proceedings, let us take a moment to bow our heads in a short prayer via audio visual presentation, expressing gratitude for the opportunity to gather here today and seek wisdom and guidance as we delve deeper into the world of research.
Hana kami akumak ng iliyahan nindat mo. Idaganda kami bikan mangat na pinggod mo. Tawat ni linggod hinaya tubog leni. Heyay makiwada-wada kida kami. Heyay makiwada-wada kida
Heyay makiwada-wada, heyay makiwada-wada kida kami.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Salam pa mga kiaulungan sing Tuhan. Pianaukan niya Nabi iban ko. Kasilasan niya sa plat pakatingkal alam. Maglasa titaniyo bat kuman. Mbo Tuhan, tunggal nu sa sangdulan kami. Buhanin kami rinchiki maglabi-labi. Law samong rahmat nu subay panpinudji. Hangkan kita di subay magkasih-kasih.
Sa ngalan Panginoon, ang tuyong Espiritong kalatag mo.
Pangulungan kang usalat, pangkalikupanan. Pangulungan kang pangirayan, pagkang walay sipog balantang nga mapagkululang. Pangulungan kang silakan, pangulungan kang apagatong pangulungan kang kasangpan ang suwagdaw. Kang walay sipog ang mga pagkululang. Panginoon, dinggin mo kami. na mapagkalang, piling namin ang pagpapalaganap ng kaalaman sa bawat nilalang. Panginoon, dinggin mo kami. O Diyos ng awan, bigyan mo kami ng kakayahan sa pagtataguyod ng pakikipag-ugnayan sa bawat isa. Panginoon, dinggin mo kami. O Diyos na mapagkalinga, mangyari ligawan ang pagpapaunlad ng kalikasan ng tao sa mundo. Panginoon, dinggin mo kami. O Diyos ng pag-ibig, tulutan mo ang aming bansa ng pagkakaisa at pagkakaunawaan sa gitna ng pagkakaiba-iba.
Panginoon, dinggin mo kami. Panginoon, dinggin mo kami. Panginoon, dinggin mo kami. Sa ngalan pangurong, pangulog, Espiritung Kalatagnon, muli kami labi-labi. Heyay, maghiwala-wala, maghiwala-wala kami. Heyay, maghiwala-wala, kilat
You may now be seated. Ayan, good morning once again. Buntag. I wanted to provide a brief recap of our first day of the Teach Sit It Sit Research Mentoring and Data Analysis Bootcamp. It was a day filled with enriching discussions and valuable insights. And to summarize, first session, we have conceptualizing research ideas delivered to us by Dr. Eileen C. Park. We began by exploring strategies for generating and refining research ideas and also emphasizing the importance of clarity and feasibility. And then on the second session, the theoretical and conceptual framework, the participants delved into the significance of formulating how about readings on the theoretical frameworks underpinnings of their study in guiding research design and interpretation, learning how also to develop a robust frameworks tailored to their studies. And also on the third session, the how to make our data quality assured delivered to us by Dr. Grace P. Porras. This session focused on the fundamentals of qualitative research methodologies, including data collection techniques, analysis approaches, and ensuring rigor in our qualitative studies. And on the fourth session in the afternoon, we provided an overview of the latest EPA style guidelines and highlighting key updates and best practices for formatting, citing sources, and writing scholarly papers. And lastly, on the fifth session delivered to us by Dr. Renee C. Saranza about accessing literature review, in which participants learned effective strategies for conducting literature reviews, including research techniques, evaluation of sources, and also synthesizing findings to inform their research. Ayan, so indeed, it was a productive and engaging day. And I'm thrilled to see the enthusiasm. Do you still have the enthusiasm? Online participants and also to our dear on-site participants. Yes, and dedication from all of you today as you embark another research learning sessions for today. Now, our sixth session, our resource speaker is a faculty member of the Department of Philosophy, Faculty of Arts and Letters, and the Graduate School of the University of Santo Tomas, and a project-based research consultant at the Philippine Institute for Development Studies. She obtained her undergraduate degree in political science from St. Louis University and her master's degree in philosophy from the University of the Philippines, Diliman. She finished her doctorate degree in philosophy at the University of Santo Tomas, and she also served as a dean of the Office of the Student Affairs and college secretary of the College of Liberal Arts of the Pamantasan ng Lungsod ng Maynila, where she taught for 10 years. Her research interests include feminist philosophy, gender studies and development, existentialism, and phenomenology and policy analysis. She is a board member of the Philosophical Association of the Philippines and Pathway Center for Lifelong Learning Incorporation, and a founding member of Women Doing Philosophy. For being part of this response to her goal to contribute to gender mainstreaming in education, and in particular to increase the presence and contribution of more women in philosophy in the Philippines, such as her current project called the Syllabi Gender Gap. Ladies and gentlemen, let us all welcome Dr. Gina A. Opeñano.
Thank you very much, Sir Reynaldo. Maayong buntag, naimbag na bigat, magandang umaga. Good morning to everyone. And thank you for the kind introduction and the virtual warm welcome from the participants. Right now, what I'm seeing are just reactions from the online participants, but I also would like to greet everyone who are in the conference venue or on-site and attending this very important research boot camp. And this title alone is very interesting already to me, and I'm excited to hopefully be able to share what I can for the topic that I am given. I also would like to um, just give a quick update on the introduction that was provided by Sir Reynald. Medyo kailangan po yata ng updating na nun, pero salamat for still introducing me according to how I was introduced previously during my talk for PMU Mindanao, courtesy of the initiative of Dr. Laden. Belated happy birthday, Dr. Laden. Saglit lang po, I'll just go to the slide. But I'm currently the Chief Education Program Specialist of the Research, Education, and Innovation Division of one government agency, which is named Philippine Tax Academy. So that's my current affiliation. But I still teach, and I've been teaching since 2006, and I am delighted to be speaking before future educators and fellow educators. Let me please allow me to give me time to just prepare my slide. While we're waiting for the slide presentation, may I request the online participants to share in the chat their research interests, kung meron man po yung inyong research interests. For example, teacher education or one area of your specialization, just to assess the participants kung ano-ano yung mga gusto nilang i-explore na mga research areas. So we welcome responses in case you'd like to share your thoughts about the question posed. Thank you. Right now I'm seeing mga expression of I miss you ng mga participants sa mga professors nila. Good morning, Dr. Sina, Dr. Sheila. Thank you for being here. And yeah, later I'll be sharing a research opportunity to those who will be interested to submit a paper for possible journal publication courtesy of GAD Journal. How do I see kaya, Sir Reynald, yung mga participants from the conference room? Meron ba tayo live na kanila? How many participants are on site?
We have 27 on-site participants.
27 po. 27 participants on site, and we have more or less 130, 140
And we have also 130 plus online participants. We have answers for here, Doc, about her research interests about feminist literary criticism. And we have also here, yes, po, science education. And yes, but and also my case, I am also interested about empowerment of LGBT community, especially in the inclusion in education.
You see that again, sir, about you're interested
About LGBT involvement.
okay. Okay. That's good. So we'll try to I'm not sure if I'll be able to connect everything later on, but the intention of the talk is to share how we can infuse gender and development perspective in educational research or in whatever research that you may be undertaking. So I hope this time it's working. Okay. So I'm given an hour and 30 minutes. Tama, Sir Reynald? Ayan. Is the screen visible now?
Yes, po, Dr. Gina, we can.
Okay. So, 9:17. I'll try to be quick with the presentation and focus on the rest of the talk. So, the title of my presentation is You Got It Right, Infusing Gender Inclusion in Educational Research Beyond Binary. And I'd like to begin with my introduction to everyone through this greeting of good morning to the manpower of the different faculty, professors freshmen, students, chairmen, if there are, of the different units from the PNU Mindanao campus, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to express my gratitude to everyone for being here today. It's a Sunday. It's the long week. It's a long weekend, and your interest, your coming here, or your being part of this camp is a manifestation of your interest to learning more and learning better about research. So probably some of you are wondering, especially those who are sensitive to the language that we use in terms of being gender sensitive. Bakit kaya ganun yung naging introduction? So is there anything that you notice is not appropriate to be used in gender fair or gender sensitive communication or language? Sige nga, tingnan natin kung may mga natutunan sa mga previous na mga activities ni na Dr. Lalen sa kanilang GAD activities. I understand na rename ng yung unit, no, Dr. Lalen, para may diversity, inclusion, and ano pa ba? Diversity, DEI, which is a trend in the global scene. Naging popular na yung konsepto ng DEI. Okay, somebody answered man. Yan. The use of man as the head word. Very good. Katokayo ko, si Mama Gina. And the word, the use of such word could be compounding. Ano pa? Ano pang napansin niyo? Parang, ano pa kaya pwedeng, sana hindi yun ang ginamit? Parang how ironic that someone who is an advocate of gender and development uses manpower to lead the participants. Or do you use this as your way to describe people or to greet people? Yan, pag-isipan natin. Pero dito sa greeting na to, which I intentionally frame it this way, may mga salita na hindi akma doon sa principles ng gender fair language na tinatawag. So the word manpower, I just assume may mga ano dito, no, freshie, may freshmen. Pero yan, madalas ginagamit natin na freshmen to refer to first-year students or to the newbies of the campus. So even that, kaya I mark it red kasi hindi siya gender fair enough. Or in fact, it's not gender fair. Also, the word chairman and ladies and gentlemen. I like what Ma'am Gina said in the chat, the arrangement of positions and how the positions may imply hierarchy or superiority and inferiority over the other. So, halimbawa, yung ladies and gentlemen, bakit ladies and gentlemen? Bakit hindi gentlemen and ladies? Or in the first place, are we supposed to still use that if only we want to advocate for gender fair language? So, ladies and gentlemen, gentlemen and ladies, students, colleagues in the education sector, what I'm going to talk about today would be the following discussion points. And with the time that I'm given, I'll try to focus on the salient points of what is the benefit or how gender and education perspective or framework could be contributory to better enhancing our research projects. Marami na kayong natutunan sa mga previous na speakers, and mine would be contribution or addition of, or hopefully an expansion of how you can better approach research in a wider perspective, more inclusive, and more diverse. So these are the discussion points. Ano nga ba ang educational research na maaaring na-define na kahapon pero for purposes of reinforcement and another perspective, I'll talk about what education research is and how can gender and development be infused in educational research. Towards the latter part of the talk, I'll discuss some ethical considerations. Kasi syempre sa research, Di ba meron tayong pag-consider sa mga respondents at kung ano-ano yung maaaring benefits and disadvantages sa kanila at kung ano yung prinsipyong dapat nating put in mind, put into consideration when we execute these kinds of research. I'd like to ask Sir Reynald, can you answer in the chat kung meron na kayong research ethics committee or research ethics board para lang din may idea ako how strong is your research ethics committee in the university. And then, of course, GAD in general research towards talking about gender fair language. So I'll begin with the types of research that you've probably been introduced yesterday. So, ano-ano ba yung mga types of research na ilan sa kanila ay ginagamit na natin o ginagawa natin. So, may mga scientific research, may medical research, market research is another one, there's also social science research, historical research, environmental research, technological, business, and legal research. So, yung ating mga ginagawang pag-aaral ay minsan kina-cluster din. Well, generally we cluster them as quantitative research, there's also the qualitative research, and of course now we're also encouraging mixed methods types of research. So, na-mention kanina na may mga ilan dito na interested dun sa mga topics on, for example, LGBT for Sir Reynald, and si Ma'am Brenda on science education, feminist literary criticism for Dr. Seaman, and probably our the students and the graduate students dito si Ma'am Yunor, if I got the salutation correct. Research ideas we can have for our department research related to the field of criminology. So let's see how we can also relate that aspect or field into infusing the gender and development perspective or the gender lens as we call it. So itong mga iba't ibang klase ng research, may mga kanya-kanya silang focus, kanya-kanyang nature, but for this purpose, for the purpose of our discussion, we will magnify on what educational research is. So, bakit nga ba siya tinawag na educational research? And I got that from the organizers na ito ay sa konteksto ng mga, I would assume, educators in general. So, the context of educational research is education. And as defined here, it is the systematic investigation which aims to understand and improve the processes, practices, and outcomes of education. In fact, parang yung ano yan yung parang if you're familiar with the PDCA process, the Plan, Do, Check, Acts. So the entire process of education also involves the PDCA process. So, in educational research, therefore, we apply the PDCA process, which also includes, the planning, checking, execution, and then later on the monitoring and evaluation. So, mula sa processes, mula sa inception hanggang sa outcomes, yan yung gusto nating makita sa educational research. Therefore, bawat aspeto ng proseso at ng practice at ng outcome ay pwedeng i-explore through research. We can dig deeper into them and we can know more about them, unearth more about them through doing research. Another definition there, second bullet, it involves studying various aspects of education. This definition includes more specific aspects of education, which could be the pedagogies or teaching methods, curriculum, the theories therein, the policies, student achievement, and effectiveness of educational intervention. Kaya tayo may ginagawang mga action research din, di ba? Yun yung tinatawag natin practical research, the aspect of applying theory into practice or trying to bridge theory into practice. Ginagawa mo ang action research kasi tinitignan mo kung yung specific na intervention. Sa action research, ang key term doon yung may intervention kang ginagamit o ginamit in order to assess yun nga yung intervention na yun. Did it work for the class? Did did this intervention serve its purpose? So that's also educational research. Yung mga nasa Department of Education institutions, mga schools, I understand are also required if they want to be promoted, no, to submit or to complete an action research. And I'm sure some of you are also motivated to participate in activities like this because of the um, the possibility of being promoted. Pero sana more than that, no, ano po, ay ginagawa natin ito para mas matuto at mas makakontribute sa ating education, mga pag-improve ng ating curriculum at ng ating theories. Okay, so action research is one of your KRAs. Kaya naman, at lalo evolving ang research, no? So, magandang nag-update tayo ng ating kaalaman tungkol dito. So, yung GAD or Gender and Development, hopefully familiar na lahat sa Gender and Development. Ano? This is para it's the goal of the government, in fact, of many governments all over the world to implement, to achieve for the nations. Gender and development aims to empower women and as well as men. Kaya ang twin goals ng gender and development ay gender equality and women empowerment. So GEWE or GEWE, alam ito ng mga GAD advocates. So sa gender and development, what we are trying to put forward is that we want to provide, be able to reach that level to provide opportunities and privileges for both men and women to be empowered, to reach their fullest potential. So yun yung simpleng idea ng GAD. Ngayon, may mga iba't ibang batas na nagre-require sa mga government agencies, including PNU, na i-comply ang mga provisions para sa ganun mas ma-intensify natin yung advocacy ng gender and development. Okay? And one of these is having a gender in all of our issuances, in our policies. They should comply with the principles of gender fair language. Kaya, in fact, even in our curriculum, in our instructional materials. So now I'm going to share some of the topics that could possibly be explored when we do research on education. So what will follow would be some examples that you can get ideas from para hopefully mapag-isipan ninyo kung pwede ko bang gawin ito. Basically, what we're trying to say here is we want to infuse a gender lens in doing research. And why is that important? I'll talk about that later on. So in gender and education, in gender and development rather, these are examples of topics. So number one, pwede kayong gumawa ng gender responsive pedagogy. So the focus here would be the teaching practices that take into account gender differences in learning styles, preferences, and experiences. So, pwede rin itong tungkol sa kung paano yung mga teachers, how educators that can adapt to instructional strategies to create inclusive learning environments that would cater to diverse gender identities and background. Okay, so that's just one aspect of gender responsive pedagogy. Okay. Pangalawa, pwede rin gumawa ng research, educational research on gender equity in STEM education. So pag-usapan natin, ano ba yung gender equity na binabanggit dito? So gender equity is basically an intervention which is even called a giving preferential treatment to individuals or to sectors of the society, mostly women and children, for the opportunities or privileges that they were deprived previously. Halimbawa, nung unang panahon, ang kababaihan, at alam siguro natin to bilang mga educators, no, were deprived back in the 17th century. In England, for example, na-deprive ang mga kababaihan sa karapatang mag-aral. Because the society back then believed that women did not deserve to be educated. Basically because ang tingin ng society noon na role ng babae ay para sa domestic chores lamang, domestic responsibilities. So pangbahay lang siya. So relegated ang babae sa bahay. Kaya the society, the government back then thought that women should not be educated. If you've heard of the answer of Miss Universe, the recent Miss Universe winner, on who she thinks is who is her inspiration yata, parang yan yata yung tanong sa kanya, no? Sino yung kanyang inspiration on women empowerment? She mentioned Mary Wollstonecraft. And it was Mary Wollstonecraft, an English feminist advocate who's one of the forerunners of the advocacy for education. Nabigyan ang mga kababaihan ng karapatan makapag-aral. Kasi sabi nga ni Ma'am Rose, women were plain housewives. And sometimes may mga naniniwala pa rin na ganyan pa rin ang role ng babae hanggang ngayon. No? Housekeepers. Or dyan lang kayo sa bahay, mag-aalaga ng mga anak at maglalaba, etc. So, ngayon, through the years na empower ang babae at nabigyan ng mga tinatawag na preferential treatment, which are examples of gender equity. So the right to education, the right to vote, and the right to yung, for example, yung maternity leave and such other initiatives of the government. In fairness, dumami na sila. At ito yung mga paraan para makabawi ang society sa mga kababaihan, sa mga bagay na hindi ito na they were deprived of. So, gender equity in STEM education is an example of a topic that you could explore. Ano ba yung mga usual, di ba, we say that usually women are the enrollees of education courses or degrees. Studies that examine the factors contributing to gender disparities in STEM fields, and that explore interventions to promote gender equity. Kasi di ba ang sinasabi natin, pag sa STEM, ano yan, panlalaki yan, engineering, panlalaki yan, pag education, pambabae. So may ganun tayong gender disparities. We are assigning the sexes to certain courses, to certain degree programs. And that's not necessarily gender sensitive. Kaya kung may nakita kayong ganung if you're interested in this kind of undertaking, you can explore on the topic gender equity in STEM education and look at how such kinds of gender disparity may perpetuate gender issues, o kaya naman pwedeng ang maging direction ay empowerment of women or giving interventions to promote gender equity. Na pwede rin namang mag-architecture ang mga babae. Pwede rin naman sa ibang tingin, sa criminology, for example. So, yeah, gender equity in STEM education or any other aspects or strands of education. Next, gender-sensitive curriculum development. Kanina nabanggit na meron akong tinatawag na syllabus gender gap project. I come from the field of philosophy, and just like the other disciplines, kagaya ng math or ng engineering and criminology nga, sa field namin, sa philosophy, karamihan ng mga estudyante, at least sa previous decades, no, mas marami ang lalaki. And in fact, even in the history of philosophy, maaaring sa inyo din, nung tinuro sa inyo ang philosophy, panay mga male philosophers ang in-introduce. Or do you even remember being told na may female philosophers or nabanggit ang pangalan ng female philosophers sa history of philosophy or sa philosophy classes ninyo? Baka Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, mga ganyang mga pangalan. But the thing is, hindi represented well ang history ng philosophy dahil may mga na-exclude. May nakita ko kanina, the women become invisible, sabi ni Ma'am Gina din ulit, no, tungkol dun sa description kanina ng greeting. Pero ganun din sa history, no, na-deprive or na-seclude ang women sa history of philosophy. So, I aim to contribute to giving a better perspective of the history of philosophy. And so I did a research on what I call genderizing philosophy para mas maging inclusive, mas maging responsive. I have a research on published research on gender responsive philosophy, and that's where I talk about inclusivity in the syllabus or in the curriculum of philosophy. Sorry, now can you help me mute the participant? And also forthcoming is my research on the evaluation about the Cheddaran order on philosophy. No? So, mga ganitong klase ang examples ng gender-sensitive curriculum development. Pero pwede rin mas simpleng pag-examine dun sa mga assessment activities. Ano-ano ba yung mga ginagamit na instructional materials. So the entire aspects or elements of curriculum may be examined here. Are the instructional materials gender sensitive enough or hindi ba sila sexist? Sige. May Anne is raising her hand. Would you like to say something?
Morning, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I just would like to ask, ma'am, do we have just like a survey or a questionnaire to check if the curriculum being implemented is gender sensitive?
Okay, thank you. Right now, we don't have, I am not aware of an instrument or a tool that would examine that. Pero the Philippine Commission on Women has a meron ginagamit na mga tools. If you're familiar with the Harmonized Gender and Development Guidelines or yung Hagadaga HDGD, that provides a checklist of questions or points that would help us examine whether or not ito ba ay compliant sa mga GAD policies. That's something that's interesting to work on. Yung kung meron sanang meron sanang rubrics or evaluation tool na pwedeng magamit para masabi ito. But we have basis to extract from in developing the tool. In fact, dun sa nagsalita na yun, May Ann, tama ba? Ikaw ba yun? Yan ay pwede mong i-explore na isang klase ng research. So baka ikaw ang pwedeng makadevelop ng tool na yon, which other researchers in institutions or academic institutions can use to assess whether or not the curriculum is gender sensitive. But basically, what you can see, what you can examine sa curriculum would be how the syllabus, for example, is formulated, and the use of the language that is being used there is compliant or not compliant with the principles of gender fair language. Pag-usapan natin mamaya yung principles na yan or yung elements. Yun ang pwede natin pagbasehan whether or not the curriculum is gender sensitive or not. Merong 5 na nasa gender media guidebook ng Philippine Commission on Women na pwede natin pagkasihan. Thank you for the question. You can raise your questions via chat or do the same thing. Raise your hand if you would like to be acknowledged. Okay. What else? School-based gender violence prevention. I hope your institution already has the Committee on Decorum and Investigation. So yung mga cases that are gender-related cases may be lodged through this committee. And I hope it's strong enough, it's operational to address concerns like this. So, pwede rin yan kung may mga, although ang caveat lang dyan is very sensitive yung topic na to, and as a researcher you have to be ready with the risks of doing a research on gender violence or gender violence prevention. So ano yung impact of gender-based violence, evaluate intervention, is your CODI doing its role o na-implement ba niya yung kanilang mga functions, roles and responsibilities, mga ganun, mga aspects of this kind of topic. Again, this has risks, but it also helps that you be aware of the potential risks in order to manage them. I'll talk about ethical research later on. What else? Gender and educational leadership. Diba? Sinasabi natin, pagka ang babae ay leader, ang tawag sa kanila, kapag we describe them as female leaders, no? And maybe initially you don't find it wrong. Female leader yan. Our EDP is a female leader. Meron ang napansin ko sa mga PNU campuses, ang North Luzon, South Luzon, and your campus, female ang mga EDP. So, female leadership yan. Pero, kung tutuusin, in the gender fair language, we are discouraged from describing them as female leaders. Kasi parang that doesn't that makes them parang different ba? Bakit para kanino ba naka-entitle ang leadership? So for the longest time, we think that leadership is bestowed upon men. Buti sa PNU Mindanao, ang na-share dito ni Ma'am Rose, karamihan sa inyo are female leaders. So if you're going to assess yourself based on what one law, the Magna Carta of Women, says na dapat may 50-50 na leadership ratio sa higher positions, compliant na kayo doon. Kasi majority or most of your leaders in PNU Mindanao are females. And I hope na may impact yung female leadership sa leadership ng university, ng campus. So isang aspeto, gender and educational leadership, how these are research that examine gender disparities in educational leadership positions and how they impact the leadership, for example, the barriers and facilitators to women's advancement in educational leadership roles, meron bang pag-disaggregate sa kung ano dapat ang role ng babae sa lalaki. So this is one thing that you can check in educational research. Gender and access to education. Ang gender ay may iba't ibang related pang tinatawag na intersectionalities, no? So ito yung mga iba't ibang clustering or categorization or groupings ng individuals which may affect their being treated as individuals. For example, iba ang trato natin sa isang female na teenager versus maaaring iba ang magiging trato sa female na senior citizen. So, an additional intersectionality there is the age. Tapos, maaaring mas matindi rin ang gender issues na nararanasan ng mga individuals na babae, na senior citizens, that's the second intersectionality, at pangatlo ay member ng ethnic group. In the US, studies would say that there is a lower gender gap given to women who are members um, of, of, of a marginalized group or an ethnic group o kaya iba yung kanilang class or race. So mas mababa daw kapag, for example, sila ay sila ay Mexicans or from Venezuela or Spain, mga ganong mga factors, no? So intersectionalities. So ethnicity, disability, geographic location to understand barriers to access and participation in education. Recently nakita ko yung post no na sino nga po ba Doc Lalin yun nag-post kay dun sa first na two ethnic graduate parang naging trending siya no dalawang graduates ninyo from the ethnic group, the first to graduate from on education from their tribes. And that says something about PNU, how inclusive PNU could be, na-educate nila at inclusive kayo sa mga estudyante from different ethnic groups. And in fact, you're able to groom them and to make them help them become professionals. Okay. Gender-sensitive assessment and evaluation. Most of the time, ang na-overlook na aspeto ng research ay yung sa evaluation. So, monitoring and evaluation. These kinds of topics would examine the gender biases inherent in assessment tools and evaluation criteria. Kaya maganda yung na-raise na point kanina, meron na ba tayong tool na pwedeng gamitin ma-assess kung ang curriculum ay gender-sensitive or not? Baka wala pa. Or baka meron na pero hindi widely disseminated. So baka this is where, di ba sinasabi natin sa research, kailangan hanapin mo yung kung saan may gap. And that question asked earlier could be an example of addressing a methodological gap. O kaya pwedeng hindi na lang knowledge gap ang ina-address natin ngayon. There are different kinds of gaps that we can address in research. There's methodological, there's empirical gap. Sa empirical gap kapag ang ginagawa dito kapag merong kakulangan ng studies tungkol sa topic na yon, there is evaluation void, then you can do a research on that. If you think there's a lack of tool in one aspect of education, then you can do a methodological gap or a theoretical gap if you'd like to explore on theory application void. There's also population gap, hindi masyadong naaaral yung tungkol sa mga aspeto na to ng society or ng community. Evidence gap, knowledge gap, and practical knowledge gap. So, iba't ibang klase na pwede natin makita. Pero tandaan natin, speaking of gap, before I forget, na hindi lahat ng porket wala masyadong inaaral tungkol doon, ay pwede nang aralin ito. That's why you have to rationalize your study by naaral nyo na, no? You have to have enough related literature to substantiate your objective in doing the research. Pero paano kung wala kang makitang related literature? So maaaring dahil nga may kakulangan, you're the pilot study of that aspect of your research, and you're going to do an empirical gap research. Pero may mga instances din na hindi talaga inaaral itong mga to, hindi dahil sa may void, kung hindi, but because the issue or the research gap is not interesting, or it could be that the answer is obvious. So, i-rationalize po natin mabuti, hindi porket wala pang nag-aaral tungkol dito ay aaralin na. So, yan yung purpose ng pag-review of related literature. So, what we just have to remember in GAD, in educational research, please ensure that the gender-related research work has reason enough to be studied. You can justify why you have to study that. And you can substantiate that, as what I said. However, ang risk dito, no, be mindful lang that when you do GAD in educational research, ay madidistinguish nyo yung, and I say this is, there's a thin line between gender-related research and sexism. That's why it's important to be gender sensitive, no? Yung gender sensitivity natin sa mga topics at sa language ng GAD is important for us to not fall trap of the problem of sexism. Ang sexism ay isa sa mga ina-identify na gender issues, among other gender issues we have here: discrimination, exploitation, marginalization, oppression. I'll not talk so much about that dahil ang focus natin dito ay educational research, but just be aware that there are gender issues and they fall under these categories. But I'd like to magnify a little on sexism dahil usually, kagaya ng introduction kanina, kung hindi kayo gender sensitive dun sa greeting na yun, you might not perceive this to be sexist. Pero if you have the gender lens, then automatically makita mo yung manpower na salita, sexist term yun na. O kaya hindi gender neutral yung term na yun. Or when you are being remarked, ikaw na ang treasurer, ikaw na secretary, kayo yung mga babae, yung mga masisino. That's actually an example of a kind of sexism. So, pag sinabing sexism, ito yung prejudice or discrimination against a person's most special, usually female, no? Nagkakaroon ng bias sa kanya on the basis of his or her sex or gender. At kinoconsider ang sexism to be a root cause of gender inequity worldwide. Good thing is we're now being made more aware of these gender issues, and it helps that we become aware of them kahit sa knowledge level lang, no, kung na-identify mo ang isang bagay na sexist, sa knowledge level nagsisimula naman yan at eventually nagta-transcend na siya into other aspects of your doing things. So sexism may come in different types. So pag sinabing hostile, ito yung mapanakit na klase ng sexism kung saan, sabi dyan, openly hostile ang isang nakakakommit ng sexism na to against a group or a person on the basis of this person or this group's sex or gender. Isa sa mga offshoot or specific type ng hostile sexism ay misogyny. Ito yung talagang masidhing pagkagalit sa mga kababaihan o kalalakihan o sa mga kabataan on the basis of their being male and female. Yes, Ma'am Laline, Doc Laline. Yes, go ahead, you may speak. Okay, looks like napindot lang ni Ma'am Laline, no? So, examples nito, paggamit ng sexist language or insults. Babae ka kasi, kaya ka ganyan, o kaya, gwapo sana, kaya lang badi. Diba? How is that statement connected with a conjunction ng tawag doon, buts? Bakit buts? Maganda sana, kaya lang tomboy. Or maganda sana siya, kaso lang maitim. Maski yung mga ganon, maitim o kaya mataba, and such other remarks. These are not necessarily hostile sexism, pero yun, on the basis of one's sex, one is being prejudiced or discriminated. Making threatening remarks, pati yung mga binubugbog o kaya sinasaktan dahil galit yung mga tao na yun sa kanila dahil sila ay members, for example, of the LGBT. Okay? So, anong klase would be benevolent sexism? Dito pumapasok yung idea na ang babae, ang pagtingin nila sa kanya ay innocent, pure, caring, nurturing, fragile, and in need of protection. Beautiful, etc. So yung mga remarks na yan ay diba, compliment supposedly sa babae. Pero if you think further, if you analyze further, ito ay maaaring pagtingin sa babae na mas mahina, diba? Na mahina. Yan. Innocent ka, dito ka na lang sa trabaho na to, ayan, secretary na lang. Kasi yan, dyan, very organized ka. Parang it's supposed to be a compliment, pero hindi, kung tutuusin, hindi siya ganun to be treated. It's not how it should be treated. It's a kind of sexism, and it's called benevolent sexism kasi nakatago siya dun sa positive, seemingly positive na regard sa babae. So kung ang tingin sa'yo ay caring, ano ang underlying na message nun? Maaaring dahil ikaw ay ito lang ang kaya. So, tricky ito, no? Kasi hindi mo siya agad makikitang ganun. So, for example, assuming that the person is a nurse, assistant, or secretary, not a doctor, executive, or manager. Di ba when we hear someone being described na hindi mo kilala, hindi mo nakita yung tao, doktor siya, ang ina-associate natin na sex dito ay lalaki. Kapag mag-search ka ng salita sa Google, ng image sa Google ng secretary, you'll be presented with images of a female individual. So, ganun yung benevolent sexism. Pangatlo ay combination ng dalawa, hostile and benevolent. Yung paminsang pagtrato sa babae o sa lalaki na hostile because ang tingin sa kanya ay manipulative, deceitful, o kaya sa ibang aspeto naman ay benevolent dahil ang tingin sa kanya ay nurturing or malambot o mahina. So those are the three types of sexism. And let's just be careful not to be injecting these kinds of perspectives no sa research na ginagawa natin. Halimbawa, di ba gumagamit tayo ng demography sa research, yung demographic information as male or female, sa sex, sa gender, etc. So what follows will be some examples of educational research that may be biased. So biased studies on intelligence and gender. Yung bang mga nagpapakita ng yung ang gusto nilang i-explore ay yung innate differences in intelligence between genders. Ano ang mali dito? Why is it potentially sexist? Because these kinds of studies may suggest that men are naturally more intelligent or better suited for certain tasks than women. Can you prove that this is scientifically true or valid? Yan. So, tingnan natin na hindi siya perpetuating sexism. Ang mga studies na ganito, sabi dyan, they lack rigorous methodology and they fail to account for social and environmental factors influencing cognitive differences. Pangalawa, it could also be biased kung pagdating sa gender and leadership. Kunwari, the studies that examine stereotypes about gender and leadership, these ones suggest that men are inherently more suited for leadership roles than women. So mga tingin ulit sa babae at lalaki bilang leaders. Studies on gender and emotionality, like studies that would let's surface the characteristics of women being more emotional or irrational compared to men. Marami ng mga ganyang mga studies na pinapalutang nila yung mga characteristics or emotionality as used there base dun sa kung ano mang instrument ang ginamit nila. Kaya very important ang statistical tools na gagamitin natin, pati yung instruments na gagamitin natin sa paggawa ng research. And as you've probably been told, kailangan bina-validate ang mga research tools. It would not suffice that you have the research tool you have created be validated by an expert. Yung expert validation is just one. Dapat merong reliability test na pinagdadaanan ang mga instruments natin bago natin i-deploy sa data gathering. Next, gendered studies in occupation choice. Certain studies have focused solely on gender differences in career preferences or abilities, which could be limiting and which could hinder the possibility of wider options for individuals as far as occupation choice is concerned. And then, of course, sa parenting, no, gender and parenting, we're doing a study right now on, and napa-reflect nga ako dito as I was preparing this presentation. Because we're doing a research study on OFW women who are nurses and domestic helpers in various locations in the UK, Australia, and Hong Kong and Singapore. So we intend to interview women, OFW women, na may mga naiwang mga anak, 12 to 18 years old, dito sa Pilipinas. And we'd like to examine kung ano ang effect ng absence ng nanay sa age group na to ng mga anak. Now, this is a kind of gender and development research, but I'm also further examining if it's not guilty of sexism. Kasi parang ano ang potentially i-exude dito, the role or the functions or the characteristics of women and the roles that they play in the family. So research on gender and parenting is one aspect. Studies on gender and physical abilities, again, intersectionalities is what I said, so inherent differences in physical abilities between genders without considering the role of socialization, access to resources, and systemic discrimination, which may perpetuate stereotypes and contribute to gender-based discrimination in these aspects. Now, sexism. Let's be more sensitive with the aspects of research that we do. We take into consideration ethics and we take into consideration the language. Madalas sa mga quantitative research, sinasama natin or in fact ini-examine natin, kino-consider natin as one variable ang sex ng respondents. So, sana malinaw na sa atin kung ano ang implication ng paggamit ng sex sa research. Now, there is what we call in gender and development as sex disaggregation. Importante kasi ito para malaman mo, halimbawa sa mga gender advocates sa institutions, bakit importante na dinidisaggregate natin ang sex ng mga estudyante. Halimbawa, or ng mga empleyado. Halimbawa, si Doc Laden ang in charge sa GAD programs, activities, and projects ng PNP Mindanao. At kung makikita niya na mas maraming babae kaysa lalaki, meron siyang pwedeng approach na gamitin or she can propose for interventions or projects that would probably inform kunwari yung mga among the women or female employees ay a certain group of the employees ay nasa reproductive age. So marami ng malapit mga anak, magkapamilya, etc. Through that kind of sex disaggregation, Doc Laden will be able to propose projects that will address the needs and concerns of the reproductive age of the female individuals of reproductive age. So pwede siyang mag-propose, for example, ng programs para ma-capacitate yung mga empleyado na to on family planning or on, for example, yung breastfeeding, ano nga bang tawag doon, Doc Lali? Parang yung breastfeeding station. Diba, we have that. So, sorry. So sex is something that we should consider there. So when we talk about sex, alam na natin dapat yan, no? Hindi natin siya i-confuse with gender. Ganon din yung inclusion of the spectrum instead of just the binary. Hindi lang yung dalawa na yung ating dalawang default na consideration. Para ang default kasi natin, ang mga individuals ay kunwari, pinanganak silang lalaki. Ang default natin na sexual orientation, for example, ng batang lalaki ay yung tinatawag natin na straight, no? Straight, which is also not politically correct, if you ask me. So, yung heterosexual. So, ang nagiging default natin ay heterosexual yung bata. But we are actually already limiting the individual to that certain choice. Paano kung hindi yun ang sexual orientation niya? Na hindi mo naman necessarily ma-expect sa isang tao na kung anong tingin mo sexual orientation na, ayun na siya. Kaya nga meron po tayong SOGI, no? Meron tayong sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression. Lahat tayo, bawat isa sa atin, merong SOGI. It's not just the members of the LGBT. Each one of us has our own SOGI. So, something to consider in GAD research and in any educational research would be inclusion and diversity. Are we sure we're not discriminating anyone? Are we sure we're not excluding a certain population? So consider inclusion of the spectrum instead of the binary. Moreover, consider intersectionalities. Magandang pag-aralan yung intersectionalities, yung binabanggit ko kanina, na hindi na lang gender ang usapin ngayon. In fact, sa strands, no, sa types of feminism, ang sinasabi ng iba, ang feminism na liberal, na existentialist, na radical, may kulang sa kanila eh. Kasi may mga iba doon na hindi na nami-miss out. And one emerging type of feminism is intersectional feminism, which is a good thing kasi dito ang tinitignan niya, hindi na lang yung pagiging babae ng isang tao, pagiging lalaki ng isang tao, kundi yung mga connected intersectionalities. Sa paggawa ng research on GAD and educational research for that matter, marami tayong pwedeng i-consider, lalo na if your study involves respondents. So when you have respondents, examine whether or not your respondents belong to the so-called vulnerable groups. Ano-ano yung examples ng vulnerable groups? Sila ba ay minors? Siyempre, kung minors sila, kailangan nating kunin ang consent ng mga magulang para mag-participate, halimbawa yung minor na to, sa research ninyo. Unless the individual is an emancipated minor, in which case you can seek the assent of the individual. Elderly, kung mga senior citizens, may mga disability o kaya biktima ng pang-aabuso, indigenous peoples, these are vulnerable groups. So if your study involves any of them, then you have to consider the ethical implications of their being part of your research. Okay, so mga intersectionalities ang tawag dyan. Diba nga kapag ka-IP ang kasama na respondents mo, kailangan mo pa nga mag-secure ng permit sa sa NCIP, National Council of Indigenous Peoples. And it goes through a tedious process of evaluation and approval. Okay, so those are just some of the factors. Single parents, okay. Generally, the females, women are considered to be part of the vulnerable group. So may mga research studies na substantiate niyan. No? Pagka babae ang respondents mo, part sila ng vulnerable group. So merong mas delicate na approach sa sa involvement nila. I am not sure if there is another layer of intersectionality kapag single parent, no? Single parents. But I understand single parents are afforded some privileges by virtue of a Republic Act dahil nga sa implications ng pagiging single parents nila. So there. And then, so, kung tayo ay magkakandak ng research and with these respondents, and of course, generally, no, sa research ethics, I'm not sure kung may na-cover na ba ito, Sir Ray, yung principles of research ethics. When you do research on GAD or any educational research, you have to make sure that when you have respondents who belong to the vulnerable group, ang base or kahit na hindi pa, ang basic dyan is the securing of the principle of confidentiality. So sa confidentiality and asking for the consent. You know, when we did research on, meron kaming research on sa mga teacher, may mga previous research ako sa Philippine Institute for Development Studies. When we would conduct interviews or focus group discussion in KII, we have to make sure na ina-articulate ng respondents that they agree to be part of the study. Maliban sa pag-sign nila sa consent form. Okay, consent is sought through expression of it in written form and verbal. Minsan, syempre, mas importante na it's written and you make sure that they understand. Hindi lang yung pumirma sila. And then we would explain to them that at any part, at any point of the study, if you feel uncomfortable, pwede kang mag-back out. You can retract your consent. That's how we would manage the risks of our study and the risks that the study may entail to the respondents. Lalo na kasi if your topic could trigger something that, you know, would elicit something na hindi maganda o may negative na implication siya sa kanilang memory or sa kanilang sitwasyon. Kaya importante yung pag-secure ng management of risks and confidentiality. So just briefly, no, if I'll talk about what these principles are. Ethical considerations. Number one, very fundamental in ethics would be the principle of autonomy. Okay, when we say autonomy, ito yung the right to self-determination. Minsan tinatawag siya ng right to self-determination of the respondent. Meron siyang kakayahang mag-decide for themselves, for himself or for herself. So, sa gender research, this principle entails ensuring that participants have the freedom to consent or to decline participation. Hindi mo sila pinipilit o hindi mo sila in-influence na kung hindi ka sasagot dito, ganito ang mangyayari sa iyo. Kaya magandang ilatag lahat yung conditions sa umpisa and you seek the consent of the individual. You let them decide on their own without undue influence, without coercion. That's respect for autonomy. Pangalawa, okay, risks dito kapag kayo nagkakandak ng research, field work, you also have to explain para saan ba to, ito ang benefits niya sa iyo, ito yung risks. Posibleng sa discussion natin, may lumabas na ganitong topic, pero at any point that you're not comfortable, sabihin nyo lang po, ititigil natin, we can have a break, etc. And you will also assure the respondents that the data that you will collect will be treated with confidentiality, mga ganun na mga basic lang naman ano, pero they're very important and they have to be conveyed well to the respondents. This will help them to make informed decisions. Hindi yung magde-decide lang sila, sige, pipirma na lang ako. Ang importante dito, ethical consideration, informed decision, yung decision ng respondent. Second, beneficence is doing good, no, to the participants, to the respondents. You emphasize here the obligation to maximize potential benefits and minimize potential harms. You are when you uphold this principle, you explain to the respondents that the intention of the study is to primarily benefit them, and if ever there will be harm in may harm na ma-entail or may lumabas na harm in the process, that is not the intention. Kumbaga na ano siya, it's an offshoot of a possible discussion during the interview. Pero mamamagnify mo dito dapat na you maximize the potential benefit of the study to the respondents. So in gender research, this principle involves designing studies that contribute to advancing knowledge, understanding their situation, or providing better interventions for the welfare, for gender issues, etc. Next, non-maleficence. Dito naman, so kung beneficence is doing good, beneficence is avoiding harm or minimizing the risks of harm. So risk management ang ini-emphasize naman dito. So sa gender research, this involves identifying and addressing potential risks of harm such as psychological distress, stigmatization, etc. Kaya sa aming ginagawang research, kapag nag-field work kami, we would be ready with referrals kung sakali, or as much as possible, ideally, meron sa team na kaya o may skill na i-handle yung kung may distress or may trauma na ma-trigger, kaya i-handle ng member ng research team. Pero kung hindi naman, we provide in the introduction of the fieldwork that we will refer you, or we will make sure that you will be referred to a professional or a medical professional in case kailanganin ng tulong. Right? So that's how you secure or you reassure the respondents that you are upholding the principle of non-maleficence. Justice, of course, that we overstated, no, this pertains to the fair and equitable distribution of the benefits and burdens of research. So the fairness of everything, na hindi discriminatory yung paggamit mo ng hindi judgmental, hindi discriminatory, hindi prejudicial sa mga respondents. Okay. Kaya kino-consider dito issues of representation, inclusion, accessibility, etc. Kaya pati dito, let me just emphasize, sampling methods, or did you make sure that when you did random sampling or purposive sampling ay hindi ka naka-exclude ng certain representation or intersectionality. And as mentioned earlier, confidentiality. Yung confidentiality is protecting the privacy and securing that the information, pati yung identity nila ay concealed unless they consent to revealing their identity. Nilalagay din sa research instrument kung gaano katagal i-store ang data and kung kailan siya eventually ma-destroy na if the purpose intended for its use has already been served. Respect for dignity involves recognizing and valuing the inherent worth, autonomy, and rights of research participants. Siyempre, alam na natin to na we treat the respondents, the participants as subjects or as individuals with dignity and not treat them as objects. Parang they're not means to an ends, but they are ends in themselves. So ginagamit natin sila bilang contributory members and you know with dignity, respect as individuals who are hindi sila parang tool lang para makumpleto natin ang isang research. Okay. Now, GAD in general research would usually be useful in demographic profiling and in the use of gender-neutral language. Dito natin siya pwedeng ma-maximize no, si gender and development. Aralin, tignan ang aspeto ng gender, ng sex, gender identity, sexual orientation, inclusion, sabi ko kanina, inclusion of the spectrum. At sana, just quickly lang, malinaw na at this point kung ano ang difference ng mga to. Si genderbread person, pinapakilala ko ulit, nakakatulong ito para makita natin ano ang difference. Ano-ano yung mga kaakibat na terms no na konsepto dito sa SOGI or gender identity expression. So gender identity, ito yung mga ilan sa mga pwedeng banggitin dyan, may trans or non-binary, cis man or cis woman, kung ano yung ano yung parang thumb mark mo yan yung gender identity, kung ano ka, what you want to be as far as your gender is concerned. And syempre, basically, ang fundamental dyan, yung biological sex. So when we talk about sex here, we have to make sure that we're referring to the male and female. Hindi po gender ha, hindi gender si male and female. Kapag ka sinabi natin gender, ang ibig sabihin nito would be the different components of gender identity, gender expression, and sexual orientation. Pero some would also, some sources would also simplify gender as being feminine and masculine. Tapos nagsasanga na siya sa gender identity, gender expression, and sexual orientation. So please remember the gender-bread person. Okay? The gender-bread person is explaining those aspects of the SOGI. Next. Okay, focus lang muna ako dun sa sa gender fair language. Ano yung ginagamit natin para ma-avoid ang sexism, para mas maging inclusive ang ating research at maging diverse din ang pwedeng perspective natin dito. So the use of neutral terminologies or the proper pronouns to refer to individuals, yan, mga bagay na yan. So let's just quickly have an activity, 25 na po, sir. Sorry. So, pakisagot lang kung ano yung tingin yung tamang sagot by typing the letter. How is a PhD holder who is female formally addressed? A, doc, B, doctor, C, doctora. Oh, may mga sagot na A, doc. Okay, take note of the question na formally addressed. Okay, let's go to the correct. Okay, the correct answer is B, doctor. PhD holder or EDD or DPA, female, formally addressed as doctor. Doctor lang. Next, how is a legislator most formally addressed? A, Cong, B, congressman, C, congressional representative. C, D, the correct answer is C, congressional representative or pwede ding representative. Next, an official properly addressed a newlywed couple when they say, I now pronounce you blank and blank. O, dalawang choices lang po yan. Blank and blank. Husband, wife, man, wife. Bakit po may letter C? The correct answer is husband and wife. Bakit ba man and wife? E di man and woman sana. Number 4, which of the following terms is not gender biased? Not gender biased. Can you answer 4 and then the letter of the correct answer? Para alam natin that you're answering item number 4. Not gender biased for item number 4. The correct answer is correct. A, humanity. Kasi yung manpower, motherhood statement, layman's term, grandfather's clock, or grandfather's clause pala. Yan, mga yan, mga ano yan, they're all gender biased. The last, no, I think that's the last one. So, these are just some of the terms that may be guilty of not subscribing to the gender fair language. And we have different factors to consider na maaaring sila ay nakaka-contribute sa pagtingin natin o pananaw natin sa paggamit ng lengguwahe o pananalita o treatment natin sa iba't ibang tao base sa kung anong mga factors to. So, I'll just go through some of them. How family is very influential in gender socialization. Ibig sabihin, malaking influence ang mga institutions na to or agents na to para ma-influence natin ang mga bata o ang society sa norms, traditions, behaviors, and attitudes associated with the assigned sex. Kaya naman, sa family, merong mga ina-explain kung ang pananaw ng magulang ay ang lalaki ay hindi dapat umiiyak. Ganun ang ini-impart sa kanila. Ang babae ay talkative o maingay o dapat mahinhin. Yun yung nai-impart sa kanila. No? So, sa sociology, meron niyang mga tinatawag na iba't ibang elements. The study of the work of Oakley in 1979 would identify 4 elements of gender socialization. Merong manipulation na ginagawa ang mga magulang. So if you're a parent, I hope you also reflect on how you impart or the style that the knowledge that you impart to your children may influence a lot. Alam natin yun as teachers, no, very influential yung impart natin sa mga bata. Manipulation, may tinatawag din canalization, yung pag-persuade sa mga kabataan na gumamit ng specific toys, o kaya kung ano yung mga verbal appellation, ginagamit natin language to describe them or to treat them, that's also influential. So think about the toys that you were allowed to play and the characteristics you were taught to develop. These may reflect the kind of parenting or of upbringing you were exposed to. And again, we go back to how family is so influential as an agent in molding the mind of the individual. Pangalawa, very important as well, and I'm sure we all agree that school is an agent of socialization that influences so much the thinking and the upbringing of children, of individuals. So how is the male and female represented in the lessons, in the syllabus, in our teaching styles? Let's be careful not to perpetuate gender bias. So we've seen a lot of materials, instructional materials that are guilty of gender biases. Dito sa below, yung the image below, ang sinasabi dito, tignan ang larawan sa ibaba at piliin sa loob ng kahon ang mga katangian ng lalaki at babae at isulat ang mga ito sa tamang column. Ang mga ilan sa mga katangian na nabanggit dito, malakas, iyakin, astig, mahinhin, paiba-iba ang modo, matapang. So very leading siya, no? At parang dinadichotomize mo na kung ano dapat ang babae at lalaki. Sa tingin ninyo, kanino i-associate ang paiba-iba ang modo? Malamang sa babae, ang matapang sa lalaki. Kaya yan, may mga ilang mga individuals na natututo naman dito. No? Kaya kinokorek yung mga ganyang mga misnomers about men and women, females and males. Religion, as we also already know, is also an influential agent to our beliefs, belief systems and norms, as well as the government through its laws, policies, and commitments and principles. The workplace is equally an important agent of socialization, how this also becomes an avenue for the perpetuation of gender issues. Maaaring may mga power relations, may mga discrimination na nararanasan. Sa mga first world countries, malaki pa rin ang gender gap issue, but between the male and the male and the female. And syempre, media, which comes in different types, print, broadcast, internet media, out of home. Ang sinasabi dito sa data na to, ang social media use around the world is so enormous. And if we analyze this data, we can deduce that that social media is so influential, and we already know that. We cannot overemphasize that. Whatever we see in media, may mga impact siya sa ating mindset, sa ating belief system. This, for example, si Potato Corner was bashed yung post niya na to dahil sa qualification criteria na sinet niya para sa isang service crew nung siya ay nag-hire nito. So if you have a gender lens, and if you examine this, makikita mo na may something problematic about the qualifications. Biruin niyo ang sinasabi dito, kailangan si service crew ay 18 to 30 years old, at least high school graduate, knowledgeable to basic mathematical computations, preferably female, have a good visual impact and pleasing personality. Weight must be proportional to height, whatever that means. Have clear complexion, eyesight, and good set of teeth. And then, ano pa, know how to communicate in Filipino and English, definitely love dealing with all types of people. So if you've seen this, medyo na-bash siya online dahil ang apparently discriminatory niya. So Rappler na released an article later on the apology of Potato Corner for viral and discriminatory job posting. And of course, sa mga iba pa, so kung may gender lens ka, makikita mo na may maaaring mga hindi tama sa mga media advertisements na to. No? Ito, order ni Macy's, pinipili ng mapiling ina, nakatikim ka na ba ng 15 anyos, Colt 45 is the strong beer for real men. And of course, we had Vicky Bello's pandemic effect ad, which was also bashed because of its discriminatory underpinnings, among others. Now, ano ba dapat ang kinoconsider natin para hindi tayo guilty of gender bias sa ating language, sa ating communication? Ito yung binabanggit ko kanina na pwede natin pagbasehan ng criteria. Dapat, when we do research, and when we issue communication or policies, or even when we post in the social media, let's consider these standards of gender fair communication. This is extracted from the book Gender Fair Media Guidebook of the Philippine Commission on Women, revised edition 2017. Dapat, yung content mo ay yung content that empowers. If only to empower or to uphold gender equality, the content should be empowering. You put emphasis on the story and not the sex or gender identity of the subject. You guarantee that women's stories are illustrated fairly and truthfully. Halimbawa din sa gender center, no? Kapag kayo ay gumagawa ng article or nagpo-post sa website or in your GAD corner, do you make sure that women are represented on the images that you display? Or pinapakita niyo din ba doon na ang mga babae ay kaya din ang mga trabaho kagaya ng usually ginagawa lang ng mga lalaki? So you put emphasis on the story, you guarantee that women's stories are illustrated fairly and truthfully, and you can surface the capacity of women such that you halimbawa sa criminology, and you magnify na may mga women leaders in criminology or in the PNP. You acknowledge the changing roles, yung gender role dynamics na tinatawag of men and women in today's society. Kagaya ng panahon ng pandemic na nag-evolve na yung roles, yung chores ay shared na responsibility ng babae at lalaki. Pangalawa, non-derogatory portrayal of women and of men, of course, dapat maput into consideration yan. So, kung babalik tayo sa curriculum, ang curriculum ba ay non-derogatory ang portrayal niya sa babae o pinapakita nito na ang babae ay ganitong klase ng tao at ang lalaki ay matapang, ang babae ay paiba-iba ang modo, etc. etc. So, yung example na yun kanina ng instructional material, derogatory ang portrayal niya sa parehong babae at lalaki. So, avoid victim blaming, etc. These are also other factors. What else should be avoided? Stories that depict women as helpless victims, promoting pornography, sexual harassment or VAUSI, glamorizing acts of violence or harassment towards women, and stories that incite violence or hatred towards people of a certain gender. I'll try to be quick. It's already 10:30. Next, balanced representation. So aside from the content that the content should be empowering, consider your curriculum to be empowering, consider your curriculum or your syllabus to be non-derogatory in its portrayal of men and women, and at the same time, representation should be balanced. Here, what it aims to put balance into would be how men and women appear in the news, for example, or in the story of your or kunwari yung mga cases sa mathematics na ginagamit ninyo para ma-examine, magamit yung mga formula and all sorts. So you should consider ensuring equal proportion of men and women representation. And of course, finally, avoid stereotypes. I think fourth or fifth. The practice of ascribing specific attributes, characteristics, or roles. So, hindi sana natin pinoperpetuate further yung pagtingin na ang babae ay color pink, ang lalaki ay color blue. That's where a lot would emanate from yung mga characteristics, maingay, hindi umiiyak, hindi brusko dapat yung boses niya ay hindi matinis, etc. So we avoid stereotypes. The use of non-sexist language is therefore very important. Okay? And we can begin by simply being sensitive with yung simpleng mga ganun na ginamit nating examples kanina sa ating greetings at saka yung mga binigay kong poll questions. So, use of non-sexist language towards gender-fair language. Something that we can consider when we do a research or when we write research and when we also formulate our syllabus and our policies in our institutions. Now, I'd like to just end with an invitation to everyone. In case you have an ongoing research on gender related to inclusion and education, you're invited to submit your abstract or full paper kung meron na for a LUCAD Journal special issue under that theme, Gender Inclusion and Education, which I and Dr. Siman are leading. And if you have a paper, kahit na yung anong material lang kung meron kayo, email lang kay Dr. Siman if you know her email address o kaya sa akin dyan sa gaopiniano@ust.edu.ph. Finally, I'd like to end with how I started. Consider going back to my greeting earlier, using manpower, ladies and gentlemen, freshmen, etc. This is, I think, a better way of a more gender inclusive and gender neutral, if I may, na greeting of individuals or the class or everyone. So, good morning to the personnel or to the workforce of the different universities or higher education institutions of the province, professors, students, chair instead of chairman of the different units, everyone instead of ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for listening. Now, if you'd like to know more about other possible sources that you can use for your research. I included some of them here. Anyway, meron tayong CHED Memorandum Order na pwedeng gamitin na reference at meron din tayong Civil Service Commission na reference na nagsasabing dapat ang ginagamit natin ay gender fair or non-sexist. So I can share the slides or the materials to the organizers later if you'd like to be provided a copy of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gina, for sharing your expertise, insights, and unwavering commitment to advancing gender inclusion in educational research. Your dedication to fostering a more inclusive and equitable academic landscape serves as a guiding light for all of us striving for positive change. And to show our appreciation, we will give this plaque of appreciation, recognition for a while. So we have this. So we have this Philippine Normal University Mindanao, the National Center for Teacher Education, the Multicultural Education Hub, Prosperidad Agusan del Sur. Plaque of recognition is hereby presented to Dr. Gina A. Opeñano in grateful appreciation of her outstanding contribution and expertise as a resource speaker during the Teach It Sit, a research mentoring and data analysis bootcamp. Given this on February 11, 2024 at the Accreditation Room AA Building, Piño, Mindanao. Signed by Dr. Adeline M. Costello Abrea, the Executive Director and Provost of Piño, Mindanao. Thank you so much po, Dr. Gina. It is very engaging and very informative.
Thank you, PNU Mindanao.
To our online and on-site participants, we will have a short break for 3 minutes. And for our next speaker, the next speaker is